The other big decision this week, House Republicans voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress. Politics as usual. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first, what will the Supreme Court decision mean for the president going forward to the November election? Here to sort that out, MSNBC political analyst and former communications director for the Democratic National Committee, Karen Finney. Georgetown University political scientist, Dr. Chris Metzler, who's sort of like a psychiatrist for conservatives this week after the Supreme Court decision. Obama 2012 pollster and fashion guru, Cornell Belcher, who is kicking it this week with the sherbet, strawberry, whatever tie and whatever that jacket is. All right. And always cool. You know, he got the summer suit on, the Sirius XM Radio's Black Eagle, Joe Madison. Joe actually had a really cool hat and shades he wanted to wear, but he didn't want to wear it on television. I said, go ahead and make it happen. Go ahead, Joe. You know you looking like the player you were in Detroit.
I didn't want y'all to think I was going on vacation because of the Supreme Court decision.
Well, let's talk about that. I doubt Chief Justice John Roberts might be going hunting with Dick Cheney real soon or any other conservatives. They are not happy with the Chief Justice after Thursday's decision.
You know, they're not. And there's one thing that is very serious about what we saw this week in a couple of decisions. Think how many times conservatives, Tea Partiers, birthers have tried to undermine the authority of this president. You had two big decisions this week led by the Chief Justice, a conservative, who reinforced the authority of President Obama, that being the power of the federal government with regard to SB 1070 and the health care legislation.
Okay, for the person at home, SB 1070.
Immigration legislation in Arizona.
People at home like, I don't know what SB 1070
that would be codifying racial profiling.
Gotcha, the immigration bill.
But point being, I think it's very important that, for those who've tried to undermine the legitimacy of this president, you now have a conservative Chief Justice reinforcing this president.
What's interesting also is that Mitt Romney raised some $3 million in the hours right after the decision. This really emboldens, frankly, both sides. It emboldens progressives. It emboldens conservatives. What does it mean for November?
I think from a campaign standpoint, though, Republicans don't want, and Mitt Romney certainly doesn't want to be talking about health care. They want to talk about the economy. The more the conversations about health care, I think more uncomfortable Mitt Romney is, because, quite frankly, it is his health care plan that we, in fact, put in place. And the other thing is,
to that point, because he probably doesn't want to see this.
With regards to the mandate, the individual responsibility program, which I proposed, I was very pleased to see that the compromise from the two houses includes the personal responsibility principle. That is essential for bringing health care costs down for everyone.
Now, that was Romney talking about the personal responsibility, but when the president strolled down the hallway from the East Room.
What hallway is that?
Jon Stewart called it I Killed Bin Laden Lane. That's a great line. Here's what the president had to say.
Today, the Supreme Court also upheld the principle that people who can afford health insurance should take the responsibility to buy health insurance. This is important for two reasons. First, when uninsured people who can afford coverage get sick and show up at the emergency room for care, the rest of us end up paying for their care in the form of higher premiums. And second, if you ask insurance companies to cover people with pre-existing conditions but don't require people who can afford it to buy their own insurance, some folks might wait until they're sick to buy the care they need, which would also drive up everybody else's premiums.
2012, Romney in 2006, same language, individual responsibility. I'm sorry, Romney and the Republicans don't have a leg to stand on. And when he stood up there with his response, everything that he described that he says he wants to do is the Affordable Care Act.
That's right. And the Republicans, sorry, Chris, the majority of the Republicans are now trying to shift their argument and say that this is a tax. Romney didn't go for that because then he would have to defend, well, you did it in Massachusetts. So if you're against the tax, you need to explain why you were for the tax before you were against the tax. And the other thing, though, for Republicans is now you've got to campaign, not just at the presidential level, but down ballot races on taking something away from people, taking away health care from their children, taking away something from their seniors for themselves. And think about how many Americans, I can't tell you how many stories I heard yesterday of people talking about just the relief they felt when they realized they weren't going to lose their health care.
And it's in the millions. I mean, we're talking about millions of people. What you played with the president, I wish in that 7 minute, 30-second piece that he did after the Supreme Court decision. He had done it 2 years ago.
Right.
It was.
That was the best explanation.
My,
I mean, it was so like, wow, really? Finally.
I say this on my show all the time. My grandfather used to tell me when I would come home from college espousing all this philosophy, he would say, hey, Joe, would you put it where the goats can get it?
Right.
It's an old country term. Put it in the basic roots so everybody understood it. Secondly, I think that there's going to be some health insurance fatigue. I think most people are now tired of the debate. They really are tired of it. Because also this week, Congress had to pass the transportation bill, which meant tens and tens of thousands of jobs to put people to work. And then finally, all this is going to embolden is really the basis. It'll embolden progressives in the Democratic Party. It'll embolden Republicans, conservatives, Tea Party people. But I think where the advantage is, it's the independents who now are not afraid to say this is constitutional. The president wasn't doing something that was unconstitutional.
Well, so a couple of things. I mean, first of all,
Good luck.
yeah, thanks. First of all, I think if you look at the reasoning, the Chief Justice got the reasoning wrong. And I think that's, yes, the Chief Justice absolutely got the reasoning wrong, and here's why. The question, so if in fact it is a tax, and Democrats wanted to pass it as a tax, and that's what they should have done. So the Chief Justice comes up with this very torturous reasoning to say, well, it's a tax, but not really, but it is a tax. So there's that.
Second, it's a distinction without a difference.
No.
Yes, it is.
And
Yes,
actually, they
no.
did submit the tax argument
Yeah.
secondarily at the
of course.
Supreme Court argument.
But
But to say that the Supreme Court justice didn't just go pull that out of thin air, that was part of the argument that was on the table.
Right.
Well, it was part of the argument, but it was also part of the wrong argument, and it's not a distinction without a difference. The question is,
How is it part of the wrong argument?
well, and here's
Here's
how.
what I'm asking, because it's sort of like Al Capone killed 100 people, but he went to jail on tax evasion. Hell, don't matter how he got to jail, he went to jail.
No, but here's the issue. It's the no. It's the question of Congress's power to tax. That's the question. And in fact, Congress, look, this could have simply been done without any appeal or any of those kinds of things if in fact it was passed in the first instance under the taxing power of Congress. But be that as it may, where we are at this point, I think what you see is Chief Justice Roberts, and you said that something similar to this earlier. Chief Justice Roberts is concerned about his legacy. The Chief Justice is trying to really cement his legacy. So I'm not sure that it's so much that he is saying the president is right. I think what he's saying is, I'm concerned about my legacy,
Can I just say something? I'm not suggesting that he was saying the president's right. I'm saying for those who have tried to undermine the absolute legitimacy of Barack Obama as the president of the United States, who, there's all this talk on the right wing about how horrible it would be, this constitutional law professor, if it was unconstitutional. The Chief Justice said it's not unconstitutional. You're right.
Well, this is painful to watch, and it reminds me of my favorite line from one of my favorite movies, Gladiator. People got to know when they're defeated. You all take a L on this. You need to move on, because that sort of twisted sort of thinking on that, you guys lost the argument. Move on.
No, and I'm not saying. Listen.
I mean, to me, it sort of sounds like Smokey from Friday. You got knocked the hell out. I mean, we ain't what he said, but I'm just saying. I mean, you can try to.
Take it down.
As I was listening, I was just waiting for you to do something that folks on your side of the aisle have been doing ever since this whole debate started. Why aren't you calling him a communist, a socialist, and a Marxist? Because that's exactly what he was called as soon as this bill was introduced and signed. But you can't call Roberts a communist, a socialist. First of all, you can't be a communist, a socialist, and a Marxist at the same time. But the reality is, and it was funny how CNN and another network jumped at the fact.
You can say Fox on it.
Oh, all right, Fox. Yeah, I just didn't think of it at the time because I don't watch it. But another network jumped at it because it's the mandates are dead. It's dead, and people were cheering, and they forgot to read page 2. And so page 2 explained it. If he was worried about his legacy, do you honestly think a conservative judge would not be celebrated today if he'd went the other way?
No,
and his legacy, or was it the legacy of the court he was concerned about?
Yes, he is concerned about the legacy of the court. And as the Chief Justice post-Rehnquist, this is part of what he's doing. Look, I'm not suggesting that Republicans, in fact, should keep on this issue at all. I think you're right. First of all, by November, folks would have forgotten about this, number one. Number two.
Oh, no, they won't.
Yeah. Well,
please.
here's what I mean.
You guys won't let us forget. Hell, man, I'm sorry, it's Sunday. You spent.
There's a hell in the pulpit. There is a hell. I mean, so we hear hell from the pulpit.
Thank you, Reverend.
You welcome.
You spent over $129 million trying to convince people this was unconstitutional, and you think that they're going to say, "Oh, well, like Roland said, oh, we knocked out, we're through."
And they're still running ads, by the way.
They're going to keep running ads.
It's not smart political strategy.
Agreed.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Agreed.